Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joe Lalgee, the realist recruiter. As you guys will recall, last week we had our first 3 live interviews from the built-in booth at RecFest USA in Nashville. As many of you guys will know, I attended the event. It was fantastic. And we got to record live in the built-in booth and interview some amazing people. So I got part 2 coming up. And in this episode, we got to interview Amy Cropper from TriCentis, Asud Anderson from Equinix, the one and only, and I promise you this is a fantastic interview, Brian Fink from McAfee. Again, special shout out to Built-in for hosting the Realist Recruiter and Recruiting is No Joke podcast live from their booth. If you are looking for top tech talent, you got to check out Built-in. And if you're looking for tech opportunities, check out Built-in as well. They're building something special. I love their mission. So huge thank you and shout out to Built-in. Enjoy the episode and we'll be back to regular program next week. If you need to get a hold of me, go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We can communicate. And if you want to be a part of the podcast, just let me know. Would love to hear from you. Enjoy part 2 of these live episodes and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this. Thanks a lot, guys. Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. We're doing a live podcast from RecFest USA in Nashville. We've had some rain. We've had some wind. We've had all the elements, but people out here, we're having a great time. Thank you to Built-in for hosting me and had some great conversations. We've got another great conversation lined up here. I have Amy with me. Amy, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Amy Cropper. I lead talent acquisition globally at TriCentis, which is a B2B software company. We are a category leader in automated testing software. So I've been in that role since about May.
Amazing.
And we hire everything you might expect for a software company, sales and marketing, go-to-market, engineering, DevOps, CloudOps.
And are you hiring just in the U.S. or where are you hiring?
All over. Our headquarters in the U.S. are in Austin.
Okay.
We also have U.S. location in Atlanta. Our tech hiring is centered really in the Czech Republic, a little bit in Israel, and then more of our support functions are in Manila and other parts of Asia. Yeah,
I love that. We were also talking, you were at RecFest last year, and obviously anyone in recruitment, anyone in talent knows that it's been a tough year, or in fact, tough couple of years for the talent space. Sounds like you made a connection at RecFest last year for this current job. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was here a year ago. I was doing hourly, my own consulting under an LLC at the time and looking actively. And I had been looking since January.
Yeah.
So it was September of last year. And, it was a culmination of a lot of things, I'm sure. But I had the opportunity to do a couple of conversations like this with people, meet a lot of people here that made connections for me and were really generous with their time and help. And so ultimately one of the connections of someone that I've known for a long time, but came out of that, I ended up doing a contractor role that turned into a full-time role. So
amazing.
Yes, my 1-year anniversary of getting some traction on finding a job. Hopefully that's out there for others as well.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I started doing networking a lot more this last year. And obviously I do a lot online and do podcasts and all that sort of stuff. But there is that just meeting people, which is huge. One of the big topics, obviously, at RecFest has been AI. What stood out to you? What hasn't stood out to you? What was your favorite session so far?
I don't know if I have a favorite session, but I will say my feeling on AI is this, I'm sure you've heard this from many people, all the vendors have AI in some description of the products, right? And, what is truly AI? You have to really dig in. Is it generative? Is it truly AI?
Yeah.
What is really happening with the service? So 2 things. One, it's a little misleading to the buyer. Number 2, if you actually are trying to bring any of this tech onto your organization, trust me, if the word AI is in it, your legal people and your data privacy people are going to spend a lot more time looking at it. And it's not necessary in a lot of cases. If all of the tech is doing with AI is generating, a reach out or an AI augmented search string, I want a software engineer in this location that's been with this kind of company. That's not AI that data privacy has to get to spend a lot of time looking at, but because the word AI is in there, it gets extra focus when I don't think it's necessarily warranted. So I think, kind of bringing that a little bit under control and being more specific about what kind of AI people are engaging is helpful. Also, I think there's a lot of, recruiters always talk about they have too much admin, it's too, there's things that they want to be doing, spending time in person with candidates, but they have to do this in the system or these administrative tasks. And I've seen a lot of really interesting uses of tech to just automate basic tasks. And that can be really powerful in a day to day and save, minutes, hours a week. I mean, that's something that is, achievable and like reachable for the average company that's like, I'm not sure what to do with AI. I'm not sure anybody's going to approve it. I don't even know where to start. Like, that's a place where you can go and make an impact to your team right away and not have to bite off the whole chunk right away. So I'm actually kind of interested in hearing what people are doing with some of that tech just to enable and automate as a starting point rather than kind of going all the way.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
Are there any if particular use cases that you're excited about or anything you're like, oh, I never would have thought about that?
I mean, I feel like there's things that you're like, of course, that's a great idea. It's anything from helping you, write job descriptions. Obviously, there's a lot of things out there to reach out to candidates and help you rewrite your messages. But, enabling your job descriptions to be better, to be more inclusive, to develop interview questions that go with certain competencies.
Yeah.
So there's things like that maybe they seem obvious, but it's just really nice resource to be able to go to. And, some products are doing a nice job of kind of packaging that up together. Certainly you could go do it on your own, but sort of packaging it up together with other enablement and automation tools that make it really interesting.
And so you just started in a new role, right? 6 months ago or so, maybe longer than that or shorter than that. You're doing a lot of transformation. Like what are some of the challenges you're running into?
Well, we're a small company and we've grown really fast. So we're sort of in that scale up more so than startup phase. And I think when you're a startup, the hiring is fast and furious and has to keep up with the growth, and it doesn't necessarily have a lot of standardization process, things like that. So we're in the process of trying to put a lot of those things in place just so that we can better grow and scale from here. So when our next surge of growth is happening, we're much better prepared to do that effectively instead of just kind of reacting. And so it's a lot about really going back to the basics. And not necessarily evaluating candidates with AI, but how can we do some things with AI that make us more effective at defining the job, how we look for the job and the competencies, how we interview for those competencies, how do we prepare interviewers to be better at finding the people with those competencies.
One of the big things that I think when you're in a new role, right, is getting that strategy together, getting that trust with the ownership. So what advice do you have for people who are starting in these new leadership roles that you think is key? And even when you're looking at evaluating, do I build out the team or do I add AI tools? What's your thinking? How do you kind of align that?
I think it's important to know where you want to end, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a quote about it's a Bezos quote, be stubborn on the vision, be flexible on the details, how you get there.
Yeah.
And there's many versions of that quote, but I like it because you can set that vision and say, this is where I want to be eventually. Maybe we're a couple of years off from this vision. I have that vision, right? But we're not close to that yet. And we have to kind of start where we are. And everybody's story of where they are is going to be different, right? Do we have people in the right places? Are we focusing, the right efforts on where we standardize our process to kind of get the most, bang for our buck there? So I think, people just kind of need to maybe slow down. And certainly it's exciting to say I want to implement AI or, go to this full talent strategy where I have all of these bells and whistles and important analytics. But sometimes you just have to start with where you are and just make one step at a time forward. And that was hard for me. I came from much bigger organizations. I've worked previously for Accenture and Amazon. So coming to a, less than 2,000 person company has been a big change, but I really like it. I can make a lot of impact with my work and, having ownership of the function and really being able to take those steps with the team is really rewarding.
Are you seeing a change with candidates and what they're looking for? Because some people are saying right now, the great stay, where you're a startup, you're growing. When you're reaching out to candidates, are you seeing more of hesitancy with that, or is that exciting?
I think it's interesting. With us, we're a B2B software company, so we're not a household name. People have usually not heard of us unless they've worked in automated testing. So we always have sort of that education to do. But the growth story is really compelling, and the trajectory is really exciting. So I think our recruiters are really great at explaining kind of the growth story you can be a part of to come in. And that's interesting to people. And I think it's a growth story that's compelling enough to engage a passive applicant to maybe, have a discussion with us, have an interview with us. I don't think necessarily that I'm seeing the hesitancy. I don't want to, leave my job. We have seen people, engage in an interview process with us, get to the end, and they'd be like, you know what, or maybe start to give notice, and then they get a counteroffer or they're offered a different position, which I always recommend candidates don't do, right, for a variety of reasons. But we have started to see more of that. I don't know if that's part of the stay or the devil versus the devil you don't kind of feeling, or if it's just a factor of those particular companies. But I have seen a little bit of kind of coming and hawing at the end of the process.
Yeah, I know I've heard a lot of agency recruiters are seeing a lot more counteroffers, a lot more of that hesitancy of wanting, especially when it comes to startups, and obviously you got the layoff situations which are crazy. So even when you're selling I don't want to say selling people on the opportunity, but like when things like that conversation, how do you kind of keep it real with people of like, hey, we're a startup without scaring them?
I mean, I think you just have to be honest. Just like you said it pretty well. I mean, a startup is a startup, and like I said, we're a little bit bigger than that. We're more of a scale up. But I think with any situation, I mean, people have been laid off from big, huge, giant companies that aren't startups, right? So like, no one can predict what's going to happen. I think, my advice for candidates would be, and TA candidates and people that might find themselves out of work would be, always work on developing yourself, developing your network, like constantly, because you never know when you're going to end up in a situation where you might have to be on a job search unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And, I try to be as transparent, with people and candidates as possible. Of course, we don't know what the future is going to bring, but we're obviously, we're trying to grow toward a direction, and we want you to be part of that journey, but we're not making any guarantees. And I don't think anyone can really, especially in this environment. And I think everyone has seen that that's, not the case. So I don't know that a lot of people are really looking for that either anymore. Like, I think people know that really even a sure thing isn't that much of a sure thing anymore.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. What about big bet or your thoughts on like 2025? Like, what's your big prediction like for the TA space?
I don't know if I have an earth-shattering prediction, honestly, because I feel like there's a lot of like this kind of mucky. We're not really sure if we're growing. We're not really sure if we're slowing down. There's still that stagnancy that's leading a lot of TA people still at work. I think a lot of that has to do with the U.S. election as well. How's that going to, turn out? How is that going to impact budgets and, different companies or businesses? So I feel like it's going to take until the early part of next year for some of those things to settle. So I think 2025 is going to be a little bit of reckoning is not the right word, but just sort of a resettling, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people have budget now or are going to have budget in like Q1 of next year to buy like big, huge AI tools. Nor do I think they're going to flip on to like hyper growth. So I think it's a good time for people to kind of take stock, say, hey, what can we do with what we have?
Yeah.
How can we make things more effective and really optimize what we've got, and then see how this shakes out, So I think my big bet is, stay optimized, make the most of what you've got, and you continue to work on your own, your own network and your own education, because that's always going to serve you well, whether you're staying at a company or continuing.
What are your go-tos for that? Like, where do you learn and like develop? Yeah, where do you go?
I mean, honestly, like a lot of things like this are great for networking, obviously. I mean, I get a lot out of the different sessions, and then just actually one-on-one conversations with people, right? And around the booth, like that's the kind of conversations I feel like I get the most out of, actually. And talking with other people who have similar challenges and just, what are they going through? Because we all have a lot of similar problems. So those are really the most beneficial, I feel, more so than like a specific webinar. I discovered your podcast actually while walking my dog. Like
that's good.
I like to listen to my recruiting podcast, so I'm walking my dog. So,
love that.
I don't talk a lot to him, but I got my recruiting news that way. So I think that's a good way to stay connected and kind of hear who's on. You get to learn about different vendors. You get to learn about different practitioners. You might hear, a team that's doing something interesting. Maybe you reach out to that person, and I think I reached out to you or said I had heard your podcast. Yeah. So I think that's a great way to just kind of, hey, I heard your podcast. I'm really interested in what you're doing. I want to talk to you about it, or I want to learn more about your product, or maybe you're hiring someday and I want to get on your team. So I think that's a great thing that people can do to kind of go educate themselves and get their network built as well.
I love that. I love too. It was like last year at RecFest.
It's pretty cool. It's
you
like
made that connection.
My anniversary,
Yeah. That's amazing. And it's crazy how much even this conference has changed in a year. I mean, last year it was definitely, it was a good turnout, but it was just like a little bit smaller. And then this year, I mean, it's
big.
It is huge. So what are you most excited about? Like tomorrow, any kind of goals for tomorrow? Any sessions you're into?
Some good. I think I'm forgetting which sessions are today or tomorrow, but I know there's a couple of folks that are talking to me more about AI. I'm looking for the sessions I think that are actually going to give people like some practical advice.
Yeah.
No offense to the vendors, but like I don't want to go to a vendor promo. I want to go to a practitioner, talk about a problem, how they solved it. If they solved it with tech, that's great, but I want to hear more about kind of the circumstances of that practitioner and that company and how they approached it. And certainly if tech is part of the story, I want to hear that too. But that's where I found the most value, and and like I said, continuing the conversations out in the festival and around the booth.
And on Broadway.
Exactly. Where are you going tonight?
There's a Job Pixel.
What about like what honky tonk?
I'm going to Red Night Riviera. Yeah. What about you?
I don't know. I think I'm going to a dinner and then like a cocktail bar. So I haven't decided which honky tonk go.
Awesome. I love it. Where can people connect with you? What's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn is great. Amy Cropper, and I don't know that there's many more of us, but Amy Cropper at TriCentis is how you can find me, and looking forward to connecting.
Well, as always, guys, I say when you're reaching out to people on the show, let Amy know that you found her on the show, but then also be patient as well, because she doesn't hang around on LinkedIn all day like me. But this has been another great session. again, big thanks to Built In. We are streaming live here from RecFest USA. And thanks again, Amy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We'll talk soon.
All right.
Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke Live. We are here at RecFest USA in Nashville. We've had storms, we've had rain, we've heard all about how AI is going to replace us all.
Yeah.
Maybe some of us, but I'm super excited here. I've got another great guest. I want to give a shout out to Built In for hosting us. Shout out to Built In. Been great at the booth. And yeah, we're going to talk about what would future of hiring. I mean, we've already been chatting, but why don't you give us who you are and what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. So Asud Anderson, I lead the global sourcing function for Equinix, which is a tech company not many people I think know of, but we're very important. The internet, over 90% goes through our data centers.
Okay.
So the digital footprint of the planet, almost all of it goes through our data centers globally. So
How many data centers do you guys have? Do you know?
Almost 300.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're really in
Building them.
Yeah, we're everywhere. So I lead the sourcing function. So there's a sourcing team in Americas, North America, and Latin America, and then we also have a team in EMEA and in APAC.
Love it, man. Love it. So you're leading global hiring. What are some of the trends you're seeing globally? So not just in the U.S., but like globally. What are you seeing?
A lot of people are talking about, the great stay and things like that.
I talk about that a lot.
Yeah, I know what people don't. I think what's interesting, and I've been thinking about this a lot, maybe along the same lines, is just the relationship over the last several years between the market or a candidate or employee and the employer.
Yeah.
And how that perhaps has changed, maybe pre-COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, and the pandemic and everything. I think that's really interesting. And
what's that change that you're seeing?
I feel there's a couple of sort of anecdotal data points that I have that is taking my mind here, but I think there's a bit of a commoditization of how people job hunt. So it feels like and looks like that people are looking for their next role, if they are on the market or passively looking, is they look for roles the same way they would look like a new car. Here's what I have. Our conversations are very short, but to the point.
Yeah.
Here's what I have. Can you do better? And this idea of culture and offerings and what snacks do you provide, and all of these things that at one point were really attractive are become less and less attractive.
Yeah.
People are looking for job security. They're looking for high compensation, stable employment, a friendly culture and environment, good people. Like, I don't think that's changed, but I think people are getting right to the point when it comes to what they look for in employers. And so I think from a global perspective, looking what talent wants in, say, Toronto or New York, compared to, say, Japan or Singapore, is very different. And socioeconomics, I think, impact what people look for in an employee. So when we go out and the team is sourcing talent, we use research to understand what might be happening in those nuanced locations. And when we have their attention for 30 seconds, talk about those things that we know based on research is really important to them.
And what's the research you're doing? Like, how do you?
So we buy it.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
So we buy the research, and what is the most attractive features that people look for in an employer? How does our EVP potentially stack up to what are the perceptions of us as an employer? But even if there's a mismatch there, we know that maybe these three things are the most important to software engineers in Baltimore, right? And that could be, again, different than what it is in Dallas. So when we have the attention of the software engineers in Baltimore, we go, okay, we know statistically or based on research, they really care about innovation, they care about career progression, and they care about work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
So that might be something, okay, but then when you go do the same role in Poland, it's different. And so we look at the research before we even start and go, how are we going to position ourselves when we do our reach out campaign?
Do you see any similarities?
Compensation is always typically in that top three.
Whoa.
Surprise.
I know, yeah. I was talking to someone a while back, and they were looking at a tool where when they do an offer letter, they can see like where people spend time, and it's always on compensation.
Always.
But the message is always can't be about compensation. I don't know. I could go on a whole thing about that.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about expanding the talent pool globally, and let's say you're taking on a global team, you haven't done it before. What are the things you got to consider? Like, what are the big things that you think people miss?
When expanding a talent, like expanding our pool,
Yeah.
we've kind of gotten away from these mass reach outs and big overarching. We're trying to be very nuanced and targeted and specific. I think that's the role of sourcing, especially at a big company like ours.
Define sourcing for me too, because everyone's got different.
Yeah, so sort of like very, very targeted, data-driven, research-focused, understanding the business very deeply, understanding the manager very deeply in the team, the future of what the function and the department that they're going to be in looks like, understanding the market in a very detailed way, so that when we go out to market to look for the talent, we are able to differentiate a 1A from a 1B very quickly. We know where that talent plays.
Yeah.
And that talent is likely very passive, very well compensated, is getting hit up every day for opportunities. And so that's the sourcing function, is to play in that space that is very challenging and competitive. And how do we stand out a little bit? And that goes back to the research of, look, if you have somebody's attention for 15 seconds and you know they're high quality, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
It better be worth it. And so that to me is the role of sourcing, and make sure that we're bringing that on talent. We're not doing these big wide nets and just get as many, talk to 1,000 people to, what are we looking for? Now let's go find exactly that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that to me is, I have no idea why there's a fascination around like number of applicants, right? Like how many applicants we get. And I talk about this a lot, and we've had these conversations too around like employer brand and keeping it authentic. So what are your tips for like authenticity when it comes to the marketing you're doing? So you get not just a massive funnel of people, but like the right funnel of people, which probably means you're going to repel some people, right? So like, how do you keep it authentic? How, what mistakes are you seeing people make when they just look at these huge funnels?
Yeah, I think for large companies, EVPs are a little bit challenging. I think that there's a lot of saturation there. There's a little bit of let's be everything to everybody. And,
where does that come from?
Risk aversion.
Okay.
They're maybe not that bold. And so I think you really get a test of what a company culture is like and the people that work there when you start to get into the interview process. But you use the word repelled. I do think there's an element of an EVP where people have to read it or feel it, experience it, and go, oh, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And that's companies kind of like cringe at that a little bit, because it's like, no, but we want you. It's like, no, you don't. Like, you don't. And so I think there's a little bit of a risk aversion to companies being really bold and sort of audacious in that way. But
well, it's tough too. They got a lot of customers. Like I had UPS on the podcast a couple months ago, and the reason they have candid experience in the way that they have it is because everyone could be a customer. So I could kind of see where that could come in.
Yeah.
And then I also saw a meme this week where it was a terrible like job ad. You're not if you're the type of person who likes a 9 to 5, you're not going to want to work here. And then this thread, the lady was like, oh, I actually kind of respect this. Yeah. Now I'm not going to apply.
Yep.
And it's like that methodology. So I guess how do you kind of keep that authentic, and even from a global perspective, like how do you manage that?
It's tough, right? And that's kind of what I was getting to off the top, which is about the research and understanding what the market wants. So there's almost a little bit of like individualized experience throughout their journey. So again, talking to things that they're important about, building really strong relationships, making sure their sources understand it. That's important. Trust. Being upfront, providing feedback, even if it's a no, that they come back. Like I just got a message a couple hours ago from someone who actually left our team and just emailed me and said, hey, look, I'm on the market, would love to come back. Like that's the type of thing of the experience of it doesn't work out now, but it works out. That is the authenticity of whatever your EVP might say, whatever your comms might be, who it resonates with, seeing it through the whole process. But from a global perspective, it's challenging to do at scale and keep it at a really high level. So that's why I think we have things, a lot of impact and research to say, here's a lot of the things that you should be leaning into. Not that other things are not important, but lean into these 3 things because that's what they care about most. And we inform hiring managers as well for the process that, hey, look, this is a really difficult search. This talent is really hard to find. We know that this is important to these folks. And so you should weave this into your conversations through the process with them. And then we can pull on the levers of our own EVP just to make sure that it's, it's in focus. So
we're also looking at recruiters, having to have like that marketing mindset, right? So like with your team, how do you give them that marketing long-term mindset?
Yeah, we look at like a lot of our reach out messages too. Like I know a lot of them are sort of AI. We always tweak our AI messages, like when, we have them generated and we put our own sort of flavor onto it and personalize it a little bit more, because sometimes it can sound a little bit robotic. But I do think that's a little bit of the art of things. I've read a lot about, people being really, obviously really friendly, but even using things like emoticons, stuff like that. I've heard people talk about how there's an increase in response rate with stuff like that's not new, right? But there's things like that I think, again, a lot of companies, especially like global organizations, recruitment teams perhaps are a little bit nervous to do things like that.
Yeah.
And so breaking down some of those maybe perceived sort of barriers that they have to be very conservative, perhaps, in the way they approach the market, where you don't necessarily have to be, because that's kind of what the market is looking for. And that's how you cut through a lot of the noise and the saturation, is to personalize things, build the trust, actually have an authentic relationship with them, understanding what it is that they're looking for, listen more than talk, things like that.
And I know we were talking before about like analytics. Like, what are the biggest analytics you're looking at? Like, what is it? Just time to fill? Like, I guess that's a big one, right? Everyone kind of looks at. But how important is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, like analytics, like there's the research analytics, but not just the analytics of the team. So I find that a lot of analytics that we have, typically, when you pull your analytics, are typically from your ATS. where you see around. From an ATS, it only captures the people who became candidates.
Yeah.
But there's a whole slew of work that was done, touch points before an ATS. So LinkedIn, HireEasy, Indeed, Seekout, whatever it is, your tools, there's data in there. And each of those tools report out on their data, their replies, their conversion rates, like all their open rates, all that stuff, the click-throughs. There's all those things happening. But there isn't really like a centralized place where you can find all that data. So you got to go try to drum all that up. So I try to look beyond just ATS data and look into all of those places. But then we look at conversion rates. Again, it's not about quantity at the top. It's about the quality through. We also look at diversity of candidates through our slate, the interview slates. We look at where we're finding the talent from what tech that we have. Are we finding our great talent from this channel, this channel, this channel? And from a global perspective, it's different.
Yeah.
You know, for example, like LinkedIn isn't awesome in Japan for us. We have to do different ways. And the same thing in Latin America. So we have to be very conscious of the nuances globally about what piece of tech is more important. So we look at the data from that perspective.
What about, obviously AI, hot topic, right?
Yeah.
What's a use case? Give me a unique use case that you're excited about, something you're thinking about that maybe,
Can I name drop a tech that we're using that we're kind of piloting?
Yeah.
So
They owe me money
they're
for that.
not here. They're not even here. So we're piloting a tool called Cubby.
Okay.
I don't know if you're, but Cubby is really great. They're relatively new, but most of our recruiters are sort of support one area of our business, which is in operations, and it's mechanical, electrical engineers. And so it's a global. And so they spend a lot of their time obviously going into our tools, LinkedIn, HireEasy, et cetera, building out Boolean strings and keywords and building pipeline, going through the pipeline, good fit, not good fit, short listing, and at most. What Cubby does is you create these AI bots that do all of that for you. And at the point of engagement, when there's an expression of interest from the candidate, it goes right to your inbox. And then that's where your...
So is that like responding to a message?
Yeah,
applying...
so you create the bot to do the parameters, you train the bot and it goes out, and then it just runs in the market. And the recruiter source will literally wake up the next day and have 5, 10, 20 engaged people who have read your email sequence that say, I'm interested in this role. So what happens is you've taken your recruiter source's capacity from doing all of that type of funnel work, and now you're, instead of 80% there, it's now 80% just doing the engagement, having those conversations and vetting that talent. And what we've seen so far is the quality that's coming in through Cubby has been really high. So we can look at the talent, I would have reached out to them as well. If I was manually going through my entire pipeline, I would have reached out to them as well. So we're seeing really good progress with that. So that's a great use of AI that is maximizing the source and recruiter's time to do more of those human touches and having those conversations and not spending a lot of the time just, pulling databases on.
I love that, man. I love it. What's your big bet for 2025 when it comes to TA?
So AI automation, of course, is a big one. I think consolidation of tech stacks, centralization of tech stacks, I think are going to be really important. I do think data still hasn't quite found its place yet. I think there's still some work to do with some tools. So I think those are really important. And I think there's a lot of work around EB as well. I think that's ever changing. Socioeconomically, people are going to care about different things as things change. So I think, especially with what's happening in November, I think we'll see how that impacts things. So I think...
Great Resignation 2.0.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, after you talk about the thing. So I think AI, it's going to be automation. I think it's still going to be data. And something that I think about often as I build capabilities and functions is, if you were to remove it, would people miss it? So if I were to remove something that we provide the business, we provide the recruiter, we provide the hiring manager, if we took it away,
I love that.
would they come and go, what happened to that?
Yeah.
So for example, I think when I joined Equinix, the first thing I did was build a research and in-market insight function. So before I hired any sourcer or any recruiter, it was, we need to deeply understand the markets that we're in.
Yeah.
So before we start any search, when we go to the kickoff meeting, we bring a market insights pack with us. And it's like,
that's value. That's adding value right from the get-go.
Here's the talent supply. Here's the diversity. Here's the companies that are currently looking. Here's the companies that we see the most movement from. All of these things, and we go, this is what we're up against. Here's what we're going to do against that. Here's what we're going to strategize it. Tell me about the job. And so they go, well, I want this job in 45 days. We can go, well, it looks like right now it's probably about 77.
That's huge.
Expectations, and then. So the manager's eyes light up when we bring this to them, and they go, you do this?
Yeah.
And so that's been really valuable. I think there's a lot of room for us to become more sophisticated as a function by leveraging data and research in that regard.
Yeah, I just think about any intake call. If you're the hiring manager and you're going in and you already know You already know what you're up against. You're showing that. It's huge because, I mean, most of the time you're going into those calls and it's, what do you know? Tell me about the history of the search or whatever it is. Maybe they don't even do the call with you, or they're like, hey, here's the job description. So I agree with you. I think that's massive. Where can people find out more about you, what you're up to? What's the best place?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place, of course.
TikTok?
Yeah.
No TikTok.
No
That's
TikTok, please. Yeah, actually LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Love to talk. Any TA tech, anything global.
Yeah. I love it.
EB, analytics.
I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about for the rest of RecFest? What are you gonna get up to?
A little bit of sun would be nice.
There's some sun coming out. And there was also a huge splash of rain.
Yeah,
so.
I know. I was eating lunch, so I missed that. But yeah, I think some sun would be great. I'm looking forward to going up for dinner and having some more conversations like this over a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
And then come in tomorrow totally refreshed.
Are you speaking tomorrow?
I'm not.
Okay.
No.
Awesome.
This is it. But yeah, and then tomorrow just another full day of just geeking out on everything in TA, honestly. So
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, so great to have you on the show.
thanks.
RecFest USA has been a blast so far. Thank you to Built In for hosting this conversation. And like I always say, if you're going to reach out to a guest on the show, be patient, send that invite, and yeah, just be patient because you're not spending all day on LinkedIn like me. So, you gotta be patient. But so it's great to have you on here, man. Appreciate it. And we got some more great content coming along the way. Thanks, guys. Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke Live. I'm your host, Joe Lalgee. I'm here with a good friend. First, we want to give a huge thanks to Built In for hosting us here at RecFest USA. We've seen some rain. We've seen some wind.
I can't stand the rain.
There we go. I mean, this guy needs no introduction, but who are you and what do you do?
My name is Brian Fink. I'm a talent acquisition partner at McAfee Security. We keep you safe wherever you may go on the web at all times. If I sound a little pitchy, it's because I'm proud of what we do and what we're building. Yeah, that's it.
You got to get excited. If you're recruiting, you need to be excited about
Joel,
what you do.
you touch on that because I think there are a lot of recruiters who are resume shufflers who are not excited about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they need to realize that they're changing companies and people's lives at all times. Why wouldn't you be excited about that?
Yeah. What about the September surge? Are you excited about the September surge? Tell me about the September surge.
So I'm having a September surge. I'll be very transparent with you. You and I talked about that the other day on the phone. Is that, or actually, as we were heading into TA week, we've got a big bump, right? Like my rec load has doubled in the past 2 weeks. I'm excited about that. I'm expecting it to grow again in October. Do I know what's causing it? I'll be honest with you. Probably about 10% of it is because we've had a few people exit the organization, but the majority of it are new roles predicated on the new technologies that McAfee is bringing to the field. Like one of the things that I'm really passionate about that, I didn't develop it, I didn't build it, but I helped build the team that drives it, is that we've got a deepfake detector, which determines in real time whether or not a image has been produced by an LLM or whether a voice is synthetically masked.
Videos too?
Yes, right. So it's very excited about that. Great partnership with Lenovo and Asus. So those are, we're firing on all pistons when it comes to defending people from adversarial LLMs, which are trying to hack their identity.
We need it, man. I mean, you probably even need that with job seekers and interviews now. I mean, you never know if it's a bot or it's a...
That's a good call out, right? Because, there are different systems in place that people try to beat the system, right? Like we've all heard about beating the ATS, right? There are the opportunities that people have where they think that they can use LLMs to cheat on code tests. There's some code tests where you can very well do that. There are other code services and code testing services like a CoderPad, which is one of our allies in this fight to make sure that we're bringing the best talent we can to McAfee.
I love it, man. I love it. How's RecFest been for you compared to last year? What has really caught your interest this year?
Okay, so it's bigger. It's much bigger. It's much
wetter.
It's much
bigger and wetter.
Okay, all right.
I got him.
All right. It's much bigger than it was last year. There are a lot of people that are here that I've either met online or I've never had the opportunity to have that one-on-one connection with. That is what drove me to want to come to RecFest again this year, right?
Yeah.
Things that have caught my eye, conversations that people are having that are important conversations around DEI, whether it's a conversation that's being led by Torin or a conversation led by Nessa or Tara. These are important conversations that need to percolate upwards again in this realm where everybody's concerned with AI. Let's continue to make sure that we index on humanity in recruiting and that it's not just a buzzword or a flash flash in the pan, that we continue to punch above our weight class and deliver that value for the people who work for us today and the people who are going to work for us tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What about recruitment marketing, employer branding? What are you hearing?
I had a really interesting conversation last night about employer branding at a dinner that Torrin hosted. It was a conversation about the fact that there are so many people who don't know what they're doing, and that there's so many assets that are out there about what could be built, right? And what could be having a better conversation. Is that instead of people going in a shotgun approach, maybe they should be going in an approach where they build community, kind of like the team at Built In does, is that they build that community and then they communicate with that community and they make sure that that community is robust and taken care of before they ever extract any value from the community, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big takeaway.
What are the strategies you're using to do this, right? Build community, recruitment marketing, like what are some tactical things you're doing?
Tactical things is I have my Hot 100 list, right? So Hot 100, right? If it sounds like a radio station, it might be, is that...
Am I number one or what? No.
The hits, only playing the hits, is that every Friday, I reach out to 25 people that are on this list, okay? Now, I know I said 100, but there are 4 weeks in a month, you get to that 100 number. But I reach out to 25 people that I may not have a role for, but that I'm interested in cultivating and knowing what's going on in their world. Shoot them a message and say, how was your week? What are you looking forward to the weekend? Is there anything I can do to help amplify?
And what's the level of people that you're recruiting for right now? Like,
so I'm having conversations with everybody who would be like 5 years out of school, somebody who might have 10 plus years of experience. I'm having a lot of different conversations about AI, about LLMs, right? Like we touched on that, about signal processing. I'm having conversations about cloud architecture as we continue to enrich and make that better. DevOps, infrastructure as code, a lot of different conversations in a lot of different places. So it's not just a conversation I can have on LinkedIn. It's not just a conversation I have on dev.to, which I don't know that a lot of people are using that tool, or a conversation I'm having on Medium, or a conversation I'm having on TikTok or Instagram. Instagram is still my favorite place to have a conversation. I just feel very...
Where are you having those conversations? In stories, DMs?
DMs. And now that you can comment on a story,
I know, it's awesome.
It's a game changer, right? And then also, like, now that you can hold down on the airplane button and you have a whole different set of commands that come up to send private comments and what have you, that's a game changer.
Yeah. Look, I do a lot. I've been doing a lot more stories recently, and that, I mean, you can see who's engaged. You can see how engaged of an audience you have. And I know you have lots of content. You got newsletters. You're doing so much content. Like, what advice do you have for, a talent leader that's maybe thinking about it, or like, they're like, yeah, this is important, but I just don't know like where to start. Like, how did you start?
So how do I get started? Is on my phone, I have a list. I have a list that is all the things that I'm talking about, right? And so when I get an idea, I write this down, and I realize that ideas take a while to mature. They just don't come to you like this. It takes a while for them to matriculate. It takes a while for them to grow, right? So there are things that are on this list, from like mandatory optionals in the recruiting process. Does RPO cut into the fabric of recruiting? Does RPO mean less time for contingent search firms? So these are all things that I'm constantly exploring, and I'm building the data around it. And then on Saturday and Sunday mornings, Saturday, Maddie's at dance. Maddie's my daughter, you know her.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, she's at Hebrew school. I spend about 3 to 4 hours while she's invested in those activities, actively writing and putting together the content that I'm going to share for the week.
Yeah, and I mean, from just impact your network, how is that helping you with sourcing candidates? I mean,
Great question. So on Medium, I talk specifically to the developer community and give them ideas and tips and tricks on how to pivot or negotiate with recruiters, because I think that sometimes that we have these conversations and they're robotic.
Yeah.
They can't be robotic, right? They can't be transactional. Shannon Pritchett had a great conversation about getting away from transactional recruiting today. When you have that conversation, you say, I read your article on Medium. I agree with you here. What do you think about it this way? And just like you recut something from TikTok that somebody said, highlight and copy and recut that on Medium, so that they know that I'm engaged with them and that they're making me think about what they want to do next and with what they want to build.
What about from a pure employer branding standpoint? What are some of the mistakes that you're seeing companies making right now?
I hate stock photos.
Yeah.
All right. Like I hate that. That doesn't make any sense. Number two, I don't think they're being authentic when it comes to talking about DEI and B, right? That belonging element. I don't think that they are using video to their full potential. Look, you can go out and you can get a customer testimonial about somebody who uses your Salesforce clone in some market. Why can't you get a testimonial from an employee and put it up on the web web and drive the traffic on Instagram, TikTok, back to your website. Why can't you do that, right? If that person is excited to be there and excited to be part of the conversation at McAfee, every single person that works for an organization is the number one recruiter, right? Like I may have the title recruiter emblazoned on my shirt, but the reality of it is that every video, every comment somebody makes about your organization, that is employer branding. That's employer branding at scale. That's deploying your values. And if you've got somebody who's bought into those values and principles, you should be deploying them all the time.
How do you think you get, like let's say engineering manager?
Yeah, how do you
get them involved? How do you get them excited about it?
So one of the things that shout out to John Rivera, one of my hiring managers, is I've gotten
Shout out to John.
Shout out
Legend.
to John. So one of the things that I've actively worked with John is crafting that job description and making sure that it's not just words on a page, but it's tasks that somebody will accomplish, and making sure that those are the first things that candidate is going to discuss with John when they have that conversation. So there's a consistency in that storytelling. There's a consistency in that action.
I love that, man. I love that.
Now, if I could just get people to do video.
Why do you think people are afraid of video? What do you think it is? Because I could tell you there's a whole wave of people who I don't think have that same fear coming up.
Oh, I think when you look at Generation Z, that if you're not doing video, you're going to be left behind because they're not going to see who you are, what you believe in, how you believe in it, how you come across. You can't fake that energy, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna be hopped up in every video? No, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days, and you're gonna have to talk about them in a real, authentic way. And I think that's gonna empower environmental strategy. That's gonna go into how you show an organization that they believe in renewable resources, or how an organization believes in diversity. Like, diversity is a great word. It's a great word. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But if you're only having like white males talk about diversity, does that really tell the story of your business, right? Does that really give that advocacy of who you are and what you're doing? No, you've got to show it. And I think video is a really captivating way to get to it and to do it in a truly authentic manner.
We had Maria from Built In. She was talking about recruiting being marketing.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you're talking to the guy who thinks recruiting is sales. I mean, why do we carry a quota, guys? I'm just asking.
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. Well, although I know some people get mad when we say that, but what are some of the top skills you think like recruiters of the future are going to have, and like how are you starting to think about the landscape over the next 2 to 3 years, like even with your role, like how do you think things are going to shift and change?
So I think there are 4 things, and we've talked about this before. I think there are 4 attributes that great recruiters have to have. You've got to be curious, you got to be empathetic, you got to be tenacious, and you got to be mischievous. All right. So usually I start with curiosity. I'm going to start with mischievous. Mischievous is what Steve Jobs said. It's what Pablo Picasso said. Know the rules so well that you know how to break them and when to break them, right? So that you can be mischievous, so you can go around things when things need to be gone around. Okay, curiosity, you got to ask those deeper questions. You got to get in there. You got to play with Chat GPT. You got to build your own GPTs. You got to compare and contrast. You've got to ask those questions, and you've got to constantly embrace a learning mindset. Tenacity, it's that consistency. It's going the distance. It's trying to be better at your game. It's being data driven. And then finally, empathy. We're human beings, man. Like,
yeah,
we talked really fast about a lot of different things. We talked about Built In, building a community. Built In does not have a community of bots. They have a community of individuals that are caring and sharing and showing people how to get jobs, how to succeed in the startup space. They're passing that knowledge down. That's empathy at scale. And you've got to deliver that empathy and authenticity. And that's why I think video is a win. That's why I think a community like Built In is a win. That's why I think that so much of what the future is going to be based on is going to be how we use that AI to get rid of the menial tasks, so that we can have more empathy and deploy it at scale.
Yeah, and I think interestingly, a lot of the tools that you do see, maybe more so in like the sales space, which again, recruiting and sales, there's always that talk about like scaling personalization. And then I'm like, good way to scale personalization is be personal. It takes a little bit longer, right?
Yeah.
To do. But I always hear that, and I'm always like, okay, so we're going to use AI to scale personalization.
You can't do that. I mean, like when you think about it from your perspective, and I just heard you say this, but I want to go a little bit deeper with you, is that when you're communicating with somebody one-on-one, you don't use a tool that puts their name on an image, right? Like makes them feel good. We all know that's fake. You come from a very real, genuine place. Joel, how do you do that? And how do you do that at scale to make people, can you do that and make people still feel like they're...
One big thing I think is when you do video, I look at it almost like having a FaceTime with someone. So I think about it and I hold up the video. This is why I'm so passionate about like the selfie videos. And I envision in my mind, all right, instead of it being like a camera to people, it's like I'm doing a FaceTime with Brian. That's how you keep it authentic. So you're someone like you have a conversation, you're having a conversation at scale in a way that you would with one person. You know, and it's like you said, it's talking with people.
Dude,
you know?
you just blew my mind because like every time we get together, you drop a gem, right?
There you go.
Is that
This is gonna be the short. This is gonna be the short of it.
Okay, all right. Every time we get together, you drop a gem. Is that when I make videos, what I do is I take my iPhone and I take my Belkin and I cook it to the back of my computer and I stream it in 4K, like I'm giving the State of the Union address.
Yeah.
The State of the Union address is the least personal message that somebody can give from the Oval Office, right? What you're doing is, yeah, you're making that call. Like you're doing what I do when I do a LinkedIn message.
Exactly.
If I do a LinkedIn message, I pull it up and I make a short video. Yeah.
I love that.
Blew my mind.
What's your big prediction for 2025?
2025.
Yeah, it's got, and this one's it's got to be a big prediction.
It's got to be a big prediction. Okay, so if I'm looking in my crystal ball as to what 2025 is going to bring,
Yeah.
is I think 2025 is going to allow more personalization in the hiring process, not in the recruiting process, in the hiring process for a candidate. You know, we got a lot of people here that are talking about a lot of different tools and a lot of different techniques. What would it be like if you're a candidate that you need them to make an accommodation, that you're somebody who's on the autism spectrum? Well, having an interview with an untrained interviewer is probably going to turn you off from the company, and it's going to make you feel like the company doesn't value you at the onset. But if you have the opportunity to say up front, this is the type of interview I want to have, this is the way that I feel that I can be successful in the role, you can start the conversation on your best foot. And so it doesn't matter if you say, I want to be interviewed by an AI, so it's a bias-free interview. I want to have a recorded video. I want to have a video interview. I think that if you go
Choose your own adventure interviews.
choose your own adventure, right?
Yeah.
Because like, you know, we talk about, again, back to diversity, right? We talk about diversity, but we also need to talk about inclusion and creating that inclusion in the interview process and allowing people to choose how they're going to move through the process.
I love it, man. I love it. That's the prediction for 2025, and I think that's the best use of technology, right?
Yeah.
Creating that actual human connection. Where can people find out about you? Where's the best place for people to find out about Mr.
About the Brian Fink?
Yeah. What's
I'm very active on LinkedIn.
I've heard of it.
I am Brian Fink on LinkedIn. I'm the first one that comes up. You can follow me on my Peloton at the Brian Fink. If you want to ride with me, I will get you to the border. And that's you know,
Medium. Good.
You know me on Medium. You know me on Stack Overflow. You know me on Quora, and I have Forward Motion on Substack. I publish a bi-weekly newsletter on LinkedIn. I publish 3 days a week on Forward Motion. On Fridays, I'm taking a card out of your book. I'm making it more little more personal. I'm not including a video per se, but I'm including my voiceover about how the article came to me, what you need to know,
Awesome.
what the takeaways were, so that you can feel like we're having that personal relationship as to let you know what kind of thought process went into this before I put the words on the page.
I love that, man. You're a content machine.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
You just got a video.
Video.
We'll get some video. We
Well,
talked
no,
about
but
it.
but like you made it easy when you're like, yo, B,
Yeah.
just talk to him like you're talking to Maddie, right?
Well, that's what we've been programmed for the last couple of years. Zooms and FaceTime sound like just do your content like that.
Yeah.
You know, talk with it, connect with people.
Connect.
Be
with
warm,
people.
be
Yeah,
authentic.
well, I mean, but it's no different than like when I send a message to somebody on LinkedIn.
Same thing.
Send a voice note. Hey, Sarah, I really like what you're doing with Kubernetes. Is there any chance we can have a conversation? Sarah, when you get a chance, give me a call back.
I love that. That's the way to do it. Well, guys, this has been another episode of Recruiting is No Joke live from RecFest USA in Nashville. I had my man Brian Fink.
I got my man Joel.
That's how we do it. We gotta get some rapping recruiter.
Rapping recruiter.
Rapping recruiters coming next year. Thank you to Built-In for hosting this, and we got more great content along the way. So thanks so much, guys. Brian, you're a legend. Go find Brian Fink right now. Connect with him. Well, they probably already are connected with you.
Connect with me. You know, we'll have a party.
All right, brother.
All right. Thank you so much, Joel. I appreciate you.
RecFest USA 2025.
2020. Wait, is this 2025 or
I don't know.
2024?
2024.
2024.
All right, guys. Take care.